The story of slave military personnel on a peace mission in Delta State tells the high level at which communal clashes are taking devastating toll in Nigeria. Every region is witnessing one crisis or the other. Insurgency in the northeast, banditry in the northwest, farmers-herders clashes in the north central, and in the south, the secessionist agitation in southeast and political crisis in parts of the southwest states are all warning signs that the unity of the country is being threatened. The country is in dire need of national cohesion that will enhance diversity for prosperity and build a strong nation. Where will it come from in the face of conflict and economic crisis? On the spot, we'll speak to a major nation builder for insights. Stay with us. I am Joseph Hudson. Welcome to the program. My guest has built a career around facilitating and supporting policy making and reforms in conflict resolution, peace building, and prevention of violent extremism. He is vastly experienced in research and program design, training, results-based management program, monitoring, and evaluation. He is a visiting associate professor at the Nile University of Nigeria, Bayham University, and served as a facilitator and examiner with the National Open University of Nigeria. He consults for several international development partners in Nigeria, including British Council, British Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, United States Institute for Peace, Search for Common Ground, and Institute of Development Studies, among others. He was a member and technical expert to the Presidential Committee on Community Policing and Internal Security, and also conflict advisor to the British Department for International Development. On the spot is Director General, Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, Dr. Joseph Ochogwu.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being on the spot at NTA this afternoon.
Being on the spot, one of the major things that is on the spot now is the slave military personnel in Delta State. It has
that is it's despicable, it's condemnable, it's reprehensible, it's completely unacceptable. But I think that once there is a crisis, there is always a learning curve. And I must want to commend the military as well as the President Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for doing things differently. You can see the way our fallen heroes, those 17 people that died, the way they were laid to rest. And not only were they laid to rest, they were given national honors posthumously. And then, of course, it means that it's a pride to actually die for the Nigerian state. Because I think some of the unique thing that happened there that resonates heavily with some of us, who are peace builders, is the fact that, you are giving scholarship award even to an unborn child. That it's a very, very remarkable thing. It's never been done in our country before. And the point is that when we see things, even though we're in crisis point, and the way it's been managed in a very unique and glorious way, we need to first and foremost celebrate it. What that signal of that act means is that it means that you can just not touch any state actor that represents the sanctity, the sovereignty of the Nigerian state. That, okay, it's a thing of pride, to die for your country in service. And I think that was so exemplary and quite salutary, on the part of the Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic, as well as the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Army Staff, and the entire tri-service. And I think that is commendable. I think that we should and we must extend such act to, to fallen heroes who are in the police, in the intelligence system, the DSS system. We must find a way to celebrate those, who are keeping us safe for us to go about our regular duties. So it is highly commendable, it is regrettable, but we commend the act, in terms of the posthumous honor, as well as the care, that is being provided, to their dependents. So I think that for me resonates heavily. And then secondly, the fact that the pictures of all the culprits, the suspects, are already on board, and the fact that they really cannot go scot-free. It therefore means that there is no way you can touch the Nigerian state and never go away freely. So I think that we must, as citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, support the Nigerian Armed Forces, support the Nigerian Police, support the state services, support all the people, who are having sleepless nights to make us sleep, because they are really working.
Okay, preventing one thing that we must take to notice, preventing it from happening again. How much of this development, the gesture of the president, the action of the military, how much has this sent a message to communities down there that this shouldn't happen again?
You see, I think that not really because I'm a Director General of a federal government agency that I'm speaking. I'm a scholar and a technocrat, so I try to speak based on empirical evidences and facts, because I'll be judged by what I say and what I do, So I'm not saying this because I'm the Director General, but I think that there is a very strong light in the tunnel in terms of preventive action. And I want to actually still again commend the president, for actually bringing the respective state governors, on board this whole issue of security. I'm happy also that the conversations around decentralization of the policing or state policing also is also happening. And the reason why I'm saying this is that at the respective community levels, and the local government level, there's been a very gross disconnect in terms of governance. So we have the federal that is functioning, we have the states that are functioning, majority not too much, because the democratic aspiration and expressions are not being expressed in those states in terms of the state houses of assembly. And then there is a gross disconnect at the grassroots. So, and that is where the people live.
And even the security personnel.
Absolutely. That is where the people live. That is where the action takes place. So, on the local government level of governance, is the third tier of government that is the front line. Recall too that politics is about conflict resolution. So the local government system is the front line for the resolution of conflict at the grassroots level. And once it is very weak, once it is undermined, and once it is very porous, then of course you must have people ventilate in different ways that they needed to ventilate and all that. And that is why we see the plethorals of conflicts, across the respective parts of Nigeria. I'm happy, that some of the governors are already agreeing for issues around the financial autonomy for the respective state governments, local governments, in their place. Just last week, the Benue State Governor, made a very strong pronouncement that the financial autonomy is 100% guaranteed for the respective local government areas. So at this time, the Nigerian citizens also now have to begin to hold that level of government to account, because that is the level of government that is responsible for some of the basic things, that we need, that will address some of our grievances. So we need to empower that level of government. We need to empower even the police post that is in that place there. All the presence of government that needs to be available at the local level. We need to make them happen. We need to make them smart. We need to make them perform their roles. If they don't perform their roles, we'll still continue having this problem that I'm telling you. And again, the solution is not about so much of the deployment of the military, for some of these areas. We need to capacitate the governance mechanisms around those places to allow them to function and allow the people to hold them accountable, and then sanction those who fall foul of the law. So it's a whole gamut of intervention that is needed. And some of the lessons we are learning from the Northeast is the fact that even though this crisis, the non-state armed actors have lethal capacity that requires, the deployment of military security forces, in those places. some of these things too, we need to capacitate the police, for them to do their civil kind of policing and intervention, to ensure that the space is open for democratic expressions. People need to ventilate. I hope you are getting the point. And it's not too long we actually left the election processes. And you know how our electioneering can be very rhetoric, can be very... I think our politics is a very hard one. You get the point. So post-election, actually, there is a need for that kind of consensus building, among citizens, between political elites and their followers, between all the respective groups, so that we can build a nation. And once a government is constituted, I think the responsibility is for all the political class as well as the citizens, to support the government that have been constituted to achieve its mandate. And I think that the president will have been very clear on the mandates, that some of the mandates, the 8 presidential priority areas that he seeks to achieve, inclusion of, there is inclusion there, which is number one, and then there is security. So let me take just the inclusion component.
Before we go into that, I don't want us to deviate from this.
Okay.
There's a disconnect. We talked about the disconnect.
Absolutely.
Disconnect between, let's say, the civil society and, let's say, the security, not just the military. That security civil relationship, there is a disconnect there. Perhaps we talk about governance there, a lot of people are not connected. How much of this has been a factor? Because where do we go from here? Because we need that relationship if we must establish peace anywhere. Absolutely.
I can tell you, see, the military, for example, is a very distinctive national institution of any state.
And your institute
across the world. No, I'm
connecting these two.
I'm coming to it. It's a very, very unique and distinctive institution. I call it the sacred and the mystic arm of the state, of any country. The military are not people you see regularly or relate with regularly and all that, because they represent the sovereignty, the power that constitutes the Nigerian state. So, but what we are doing is that we're running some programs, in the institute, and some of the programs we do with partners, because we don't actually work alone. We work with people based on comparative advantages. There is a program we've been doing in the last 2-3 years on it's called the civil-military relation, and as well as the human peace security. For the human peace and security, we work with the Ministry of Women Affairs as well as the UN Women, all across the country, working on the United Nations Security Council resolution on women, peace and security that is involving women. And as well as there's a specific one too with the military women, that is female who are working with the military, in terms of getting them to involve in this process. There is another program too we are doing, and as I speak with you, to my team will be going, to Sokoto, doing 2 type of kind of interventions that we are doing with Frederick Ebert Steam Fund. They are providing some of those seed fundings for those kind of intervention on what we call the civil-military relation, a component for the entire tri-service, and then another component for women, in the service. What is the essence of that program? The essence of that program largely is to build the capacity of these people to understand the relationship between the military, which I mentioned earlier is a very distinctive institutions. People cannot really understand how they operate. So there is the need for that understanding, particularly in conflict-affected areas where they need to intervene. So there is a need for civil society to have a bit of nuanced understanding of how the military operate, particularly when they undertake counterinsurgency operations, and all that. To also know that...
I'll just stop you there. We'll take a break so that when we come back, you'll give us more details on that.
All right.
Okay. welcome back to On the Spot with the Director General, National Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution, Dr. Joseph Ochogwu.
Thank you.
Okay, we were talking about civil.
Yes, civil military relations. So you can see that, like I said, some of the lesson learning, even the military institutions have come to understand that there is a need. That is why you see where they have the CIMIC decks, that is the civil military decks, in the respective tri-services, and then you see them too doing a lot of interventions in civil community in terms of buying the hearts of minds of the people through the constructions of borehole, hospital, basic things, to try to endear themselves to local communities, and all that, and doing some kind of exercise with the community. They try to get the community to have an understanding. The reason is that you need the community to do any kind of work that you are doing, but the point we're trying to make is that we don't need to continuously, overexpose our military institution, to some of these internal security operations. I think since 2000, we've been doing that consistently. There is a need for paradigm shift, and I'm so happy too that the military hierarchy too are very much aware, of what this does to the institution. There is a need for us to capacitate the Nigerian police force.
As a matter of fact, there shouldn't even be that need if the citizens themselves are the peace builders. We don't even need to take the military there.
Okay.
Now, let me take your if we just talk about some of the crises in the northeast, northwest, north central, every part of the country, you hear one crisis or the other. We have the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution there. Investments have been made. You talked about some of the efforts that you have made, but the crisis in Nigeria seems to be, should I say, increasing? It has not dulled down.
It's looking what we call protracted and intractable.
You can't tell when you think that we're making progress. You see us backward. And so, are you concerned, being the head of that institute, that we can't actually say that we have made headway?
No, I'm actually concerned. I'm actually very concerned that there is a high level proliferation of violence, in our society at the respective level, and even at times too at the level of conversation. Violence can be direct and indirect. I hope you are getting the point.
Yes, yeah.
So the ones we found out actually is the very direct one, that leads to the destruction of lives and properties and all that. But there is no doubt too, this is time for us to have a specifically dedicated national program on violence reduction. Because any society that has this kind of level of proliferation of violence will need to resource, capacitate a specifically dedicated program on national violence reduction. Because violence can be both from state, non-state actors. It can be both institutional and individual. There is a way violence can be perpetuated against you. You don't understand that it is violence. So we need to do that. So that is why I was coming to this issue of inclusion, that is in the presidential priority, and why we all need to take it and run with it. Because what does inclusion mean? Inclusion means a sense of belonging and a sense of participation, in your society and in where you find yourself. So we are talking about issues around social inclusion, which means that there is no discrimination between men and women, and things that is done is well done. We're talking about economic inclusion, closing the very increasing gap between the rich and the poor. I hope you're understanding the point. And then we are talking about political inclusion to ensure that the spaces are open up for genuine and authentic democratic ventilation of the needs and aspirations of the people, within the political space. So, and those are some of the things that as an institute, we are unpacking, to get partners, society, everybody to understand that we don't need to lose track of this 8 priority agenda of the president.
So tell us, where do you want to come in now? Where is the institute now? Where is the place of the institute now in this 8-point agenda priorities of the government that you're talking about? What role needs to be playing there now?
Great. We are playing role in the social sector, for example, the areas around inclusion. Ensuring that we amplify the voice for women, amplify the voice for persons with disability, and amplify the voice too for youth population. because the youths are actually critical stakeholders, within our national demography, and they are not people that we can isolate. Also, we're working with partners in the security sector. We are capacitating them on the fact that you don't need the use of force, to manage certain crises. You need to learn some of the soft skills around negotiation, mediation, dialogue, collaborations and partnerships and linkages, to build consensus among divergent views. So once you're able to train military security police personnel, on this soft skill, you discover that the violence within that sector begin to reduce on its own, because one, the officers and men are already capacitated in this emotional intelligence component, and how to handle crisis, without necessarily the use of force. So because one, the presence of arm presents this whole idea of the use of force. So once you find a military man who is, or a policeman who is well trained in these particular skills that we are talking, we do this training to our National Peace Academy. There is a series of it that is happening even in April, and going forward, and all that, where people from different agencies, including the private sector, they come, and then we train them, capacitate them. Also, we partner with community-based organizations, as well as faith-based organizations, the Christian Association of Nigeria, the GNI. We just finished some partnership with Ufuk Dialogue. So we work in very unique way, actually, that we at times we don't look like state institution, like government institution. And the reason is that we work to serve as that bridge, between the state and the citizens, to provide some level of understanding between the citizens of Nigeria, as well as the Nigerian state, and what the Nigerian state is doing, and how we need to build peaceful coexistence and social harmony, amongst ourselves. So it's actually a very, it's a very unique and creative kind of work. So some people see me, they think whether I'm an NGO worker, a development worker, at times they see me, they think whether I'm a military person, and all that, and all that.
Okay, before we go, just give me, just briefly on this, this issue of early warning signs. Most of the time you see crisis is brewing, and then nobody takes any action. Security don't take that, government agencies don't take that. That engagement, people to engage the communities in dialogue so that they will understand the implication of that conflict, and then the importance of not going into any of this crisis.
No,
what are you doing towards that direction? That early response to.
In the literature and from our researches over the years, we've discovered that there is always an early warning sign, but oftentimes the difficulty has been the problem around the response angle. And we've been working on that component of the response angle. But I'm going to tell you something where I said there is a disconnect at the local level, and why we need to focus at the local level. Let's take, for example, a crisis happening in a particular remote community, where there is no access to road, there is no access to, there is no development presence. What do you do in that kind of thing? Let's assume that you call the police. Maybe there is no even police presence there. The police is at the state headquarters, which is over maybe 100 kilometers from that spot. Because you need to understand Nigeria to know the terrain and how some of these things work in terms of response. Out of time,
so just tell us.
So what we are doing.
What should you do?
As we speak right now, we are working. We have funding from the USAID through Mexico that we are working on what we call the Partners project, which actually deals with the response angle. And at the national level, we inaugurated a response team. So what we are doing basically is to pick some DEX people who are responders, and then we work with the local community people called the CWINs, who local community monitors. We are already operating in about 5 states, and then we are still scaling up, based on the funding we get from Mexico and all that. From our national budget, we have a PTANs of fund, but that is not stopping us from doing what we are doing. That's why I said we work collaboratively with partners and all that to ensure that we achieve what we need to achieve. So we hope that before the end of this year, we would have activated all those kind of systems, because all the services too are embedded in it. Our situation room is going to be up and running, I think, by ending of April. Already the equipment and some of the stuffs are there. So we're going to scale up, and then our response system in terms of alerting those responders are there. And then, of course, also appeal to the state governments as well as the local government authority to do their bit, so that when there is a crisis, the responders from the police, from the military too, can easily have access. Because if there is no access, response will always be very poor.
It's all right. I think we don't have much time again. So we'll stop there. Thank you so much. Director General, Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution, Dr. Joseph Ochogwu. Thank you for being on the spot.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the spot. Yeah.
Okay, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. I'm Joseph Ochogwu.